This is John Howell Essential Cuts, your daily rundown of the best from today's show on 890 WLS.
The Hunter Biden plea deal is in jeopardy. It fell apart today. Hunter Biden appeared agitated and worried during the hearing as the plea deal struck between his legal team and the feds began to fall apart. He appeared in court wearing a dark suit, slicked back hair, spoke very softly, answered a series of what we thought were going to be routine questions from the judge. He looked down as the prosecutor recounted his personal struggles, earnings, and tax troubles. But then the plea deal agreement began to fall apart. He appeared to be concerned. Let's get some legal analysis from our next guest. Kaivan Shroff is a senior advisor for the Institute for Education and Public Interest. He has a JD from Harvard, an MBA from Yale, back to the Harvard Kennedy School, and a returning expert on the John Howell Show. Kaivan, how are you, sir?
Good. Great to be back.
Well, thank you. How often do plea deals like this blow up?
Not very often. I think, you kind of mentioned people were expecting this to be a really routine day, and it turned out into this big dramatic saga, which is, I think, concerning for people on both sides.
Why was the judge concerned about signing off on the deal that both sides had agreed to?
So it seemed like two issues were at play for the judge here. One was she wanted to know sort of how the two different charges related to one another. And two, she also wanted to understand whether this agreement sort of acted in theory as an immunity sort of deal for Hunter Biden against other charges that could have come down from this ongoing investigation, or whether these were concrete, sort of wrapping up these very two specific charges and the government could bring further charges down the road.
The tax charges, misdemeanors, they agreed on the amount that he had to, and then I guess they also narrowed the window of what could be investigated for tax fraud. He's copped to that. I don't understand why she was worried about overseeing the possibility of the gun charge expanding into other areas, and that's why she didn't want to become a caretaker of Hunter Biden, and she wanted the prosecutors and the defense team to sort that out before she signs off on it. Am I anywhere near reasonably accurate on that?
That's reasonably accurate, but I think what's interesting here is, so yes, she didn't want to be the person overseeing Hunter Biden's compliance with this sort of gun diversion remedy. But at the same time, the goal of that setup was to avoid the charges of partisanship, or that, some body that the administration or some political actor, ideally not a federal judge, who's supposed to be sort of independent, would control, whereas giving her the power to do it sort of sidesteps that. And as we all know, she is a Trump appointee. So to have her oversee this, I think, would add a lot of credibility, was the idea. But we have to also note, it is incredibly rare. Last time I joined you, we talked about it's incredibly rare that the government would even bring these charges, these felony charges. And so it's kind of a double whammy for Hunter Biden because, yes, this is typically a standard plea deal situation, but these charges aren't typically brought, and so there are not that many similar cases, and so the judge is slamming him on that end too.
So the judge is a Trump appointee, the prosecutors are, and the DOJ special investigator, Weiss, he is a Trump appointee too, which the president left him in place to try to avoid the appearance of impropriety. The Archibald Cox sort of routine. So, I understand why the judge doesn't want her fingerprints on this. It makes total sense. I think she might have made the right decision. So could she have used, and I know that this is primarily used with corporations. We have it here in Chicago all the time because you can't put corporations in jail. But you can use the deferred prosecution angle. Could that have been used? In other words, with a gun charge, if it expands, I have the right to go back and just pull this whole thing away from you if you don't meet my criteria. Could she have used that?
I think, that is typically reserved for, white-collar crimes and corporate malfeasance. But I think the idea is pretty similar with what was behind this gun diversion program, where sort of if you don't comply, of course, same thing with those deferred agreements. There's monitoring that goes on. In this case, there would have been monitoring, and violation of that monitoring would have led to charges. And so I think that's interesting to point out. Obviously, if you're on the Democrat side of things, you're seeing this as a pattern where in these supposedly standard legal proceedings, as we saw last year with Judge Eileen Cannon, another Trump appointee, sort of pushing back really hard on Jack Smith and then getting overturned by a different panel of judges. It's sort of a similar scenario, I think, where people in the legal community, experts, expect things to go one way, and this sort of rogue Trump appointee kind of does something different. That's not to say in this instance she was necessarily, out of pocket for what she did, but I do think it is a trend.
Well, that's kind of a political opinion, but I don't think she was rogue here. She thought it was sloppy work. That's my understanding.
I think it's interesting to see, because what's going to happen now, most likely, in my opinion, is that they're going to, come back with a new sort of slightly revised agreement, and she's going to put it through. So I think in the short term, the impact of this is basically, a bunch of Republicans are running around saying, we told you this plea agreement wasn't, fair and it was an easy deal. But, in time, I think it will stand up to scrutiny that she did give this pushback, because if she does later on approve the deal, then, I think it sort of takes the wind out of the sails of that argument that, special treatment was given.
It also gives her a little cover for down the line. I understand she, has a future ahead of her.
Sure.
Every president has to deal with family members. I remember Bill Clinton with his brother Roger, and, all Republicans too, Nixon's brother and Billy Carter's Billy Beer brother. And, it's amazing that as vice president that Joe Biden, maybe what he should have done, in my opinion, is say, I have an adult son, and he can do what he wants to do. And he's going to take this seat on this Ukrainian power company's board of directors, which is just crazy. But I'd just like to say I'm recusing myself from anything to do with that company in particular, even that country, if I can get away from not dealing with it. And I encourage him not to take that job. Maybe he could find something a little less politically hot for me as vice president. I wonder if that conversation ever took place in the Biden family. Come on, do you have to do this?
Yeah, it is an interesting question. And obviously, these are not normal times with the involvement of children in the last administration, too. So,
I know. I know that the Chinese patents with Ivanka and the $2 billion from the Saudis, I know. But you would think that presidents would say, look, while you're going to have to find something to do. And obviously, you have a famous name. You have to stay out of politics. You have to stay out of anything that seems smelly or hinky.
Yeah, I think this is an example, and I actually wrote a piece about this in the Boston Globe, where it speaks well to Biden that he didn't involve himself in this, but we have to also draw a little distinction. I mean, Hunter Biden is a private citizen,
right.
and Ivanka Trump was part of the Trump administration doing these things.
I know.
So, I think...
Yeah, and sanctions against those companies were lifted about 2 weeks after Ivanka got her patent. So I know, and I'm not calling for an investigation into that. It appears to all be legal, but it certainly looks a little questionable to most Americans. Kaivan Shroff, thank you very much for your time, sir. We'll have you back, I'm sure, Senior Advisor, Attorney for the Institute of Education and Public Interest. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Reading from my next guest piece, Carl Cannon from RealClearPolitics.com. The 1735 Project, this is an introduction. The media is in trouble. Its traditional business model has all but collapsed. Its journalism standards are in a free fall. Voters in the U.S. express historically high levels of mistrust. Faith in our nation's political system is disintegrating at the same time. Belief in government has never been lower. These two trends, interrelated, mutually reinforcing, have been years in the making, and together they constitute a crisis in confidence in the two institutions essential to self-government. That's well put. Carl Cannon joins us now on the Big 89. Carl, I want to talk about how to begin to fix this, but how did we get here?
Well, the press, John, through most of your life and mine, in the late 20th century, had this idea that we should be objective. And people, postmodernists on the college campuses, lefties, and said, well, you can't be perfectly objective. Well, okay, nobody ever said you could, but we did our best. And there were old rules of the road. You give both sides their say. You don't try and use straw man arguments. You get your facts right. You don't name call. All those things that we grew up with. But under the financial pressures that, starting with newspapers and, it's true with television, radio, any content business, we started having to, adjust. What are we going to do? How are we going to stay in business? And one model was, we'll be partisan. And most of the press, the New York Times doesn't admit that's what it's done, but that's what most of them have done. And And it's a problem. And you see the problem because people don't trust the press anymore, especially if they're conservatives or Republicans.
They trust my audience would trust Fox News overwhelmingly. You pick your silo and then you feed from that silo alone. And I've said it a million times, you're a creature of whatever you consume, whether it's nutritionally or as far as news sources. So let's talk, we're doing what we're doing because we're trying to sell products and we're trying to pander to our audience. Let's set that part aside for right now. But as far as the parties, they always tout that they're going to bring the country together. I mean, Biden said he was going to do that. And yet, modern campaigns, as you pointed out, Carl, are built around cultural wedge issues designed to defy solutions to the problems.
Well, that's right. In the old days, E.J. Dionne wrote about this back when Bill Clinton was running for president the first time, and he was picking up on something Arthur Schlesinger wrote. If you run a campaign on issues and you offer solutions, presumably then the winning side, when they win, they can invoke their solution. Now, not unilaterally. They have to compromise. They have to talk to the other side. They probably maybe can't do it perfectly the way they said, but this happened with Bill Clinton. He ran on a series of issues. They were all on putting people first. He was going to raise the earned income tax credit. He was going to do these kind of things to help people go from, poverty to the working class, and he won. And so then he did these things. But since then, campaigns have devolved, what you were saying, into these cultural issues and name calling. They're framed by the political consultants and the party professionals in a way to defy solution. The other side is evil. The other side are Nazis. The other side are communists. The other side are bigots. Well, what's the voter supposed to do with that?
The voter is supposed to check the box and send them monthly credit card contribution to their candidate or their party because as the other side is an existential threat. I mean, it's a brilliant business model for talk radio and or the parties. I get it, but it's going to lead to the end of our representative republic. Also, as you wrote, this entire enterprise depends on a losing candidate or party accepting the results of adverse election outcomes like Al Gore in 2000.
That's right, and Mike Pence,
Yeah.
But look, when Gore lost, this was the most divisive election in 100 years in this country, and he won the popular vote, not by a lot, 400,000 or 500,000 votes, but we have the Electoral College. He abided by that. They had this recount in Florida. The ballot was screwed up there. It went to the Florida Supreme Court, which proved itself to just be a sort of a partisan entity, and so then went to the United States Supreme Court, and and then there were recounts by the media. Gore probably lost Florida by 500 or 600 votes, and with it the presidency. And he had right to be bitter. If Ralph Nader isn't running that year, Gore undoubtedly carries Florida and probably New Hampshire too. But he was the vice president. It came time for him. First of all, in December, when the Supreme Court made its decision, he gave one of the most gracious concession speech you'll ever hear. The rhetoric was deliberately Lincoln-esque. He kind of echoed Lincoln. And then he was the guy who presided over the Electoral College vote, and he did it with extreme class. And that's what we had come to expect, except that, the Democrats, there were little echoes there. A lot, 30 Democrats.
John Lewis.
The inauguration, the sainted John Lewis among them, right? And then when John Kerry loses in close election, not that close, 51-49, but he loses Ohio, these rumors crop up on the far left about voting machines. Same crap you hear now from Rudy Giuliani and these people. So, and look, what Trump did. Let's not make false equivalency. What Trump did was above and beyond the call. I mean, Donald Trump was questioning the results of this election before the votes in September. He was going around, they're stealing it from me. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not real. How can the system survive that if the losing side won't accept that they win? But again, I'm not really primarily writing about the two political parties. As you said, John, they do what they do. They're trying to win elections. But the press used to be the referee. We used to blow the whistle on them when they were excess. We didn't join them. And that's what's changed, I think.
Okay, so let's use Arthur Schlesinger's phrase. What is the remedy?
Well, now that's something I'm going to arrive at that gradually because I have to bring my readers along slowly and it's going to take about 30 weeks to do it. But I guess what I would ask them is to pay attention to the Real Clear Politics 1735 project as it unfolds. I'm writing the second installment as we speak.
Tell me,
not as we speak, but
right.
before you called me, that's what I was working on.
Tell my listeners what happened on a summer day 288 years ago, and who was John Peter Zenger?
John Peter Zenger was, first of all, he was a German immigrant. Very little is known about him personally. We think his father died on the way over on the boat. They were religious. They were seeking religious freedom. His mother shows up on these shores with 5 kids. He learns English. He goes to work for a printer, and by the time he's in his 30s, he's the printer of a newspaper that challenges the governor, a kind of corrupt, preening guy named Cosby, who was the king's choice in these colonies to be the governor of New York. And this newspaper was really put out by other people. Governor Morris's grandfather, he was a signer. There was a political faction that was opposed to Cosby, and this paper was a critical paper, and he was sued for libel by the governor. And in those days, British libel law, truth was not a defense. The Crown actually had this funny to our ears. If the libel is true, that makes it even worse because people will believe it. And his lawyer, also an immigrant from Scotland, went into court and said, "No, that cannot be. A free people you have to be able to criticize the government. You have not the king." He didn't say we weren't there yet.
Right.
But you have to be able to criticize the people who are running your government and point out what their faults are, or you don't have freedom.
And he won, right?
The jury bought it, man, and he was acquitted, and he was carried out his shoulders, and he was a hero. He was actually, John Peter Zenger, kind of the stand-in. He was the printer. He wasn't really writing the editorials, but he was the guy they locked up. He was in jail for 10 months while the trial was going on, and managed to put his newspaper out from jail. He had his wife and his boys working on it. He had these shadowy guys writing for him, and it sets the tone for freedom of the press, not just in this country but around the world. In other words, truth. Truth is a defense from libel, and it elevates truth to the number one reason that you're going to have a press. Sounds
like it's in the same category as Benjamin Franklin or Sam Adams up in Boston, or even Thomas Paine.
That's right, and this is much earlier than that. But the first newspapers was Benjamin Franklin's brother, and he finally got tired of the authorities hassling him. And went out of the printing business, but Ben Franklin didn't. He stayed in it. And look, John, you and I know this. The freedom of the press wasn't created by the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. It's the other way around. Freedom of the press created the American Revolution. It's what galvanized people, and we need it as much now as we did then.
Carl, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you very much. We'll follow the 1735 project at RealClearPolitics.com. Good luck. You got 30 different installments coming our way?
I've got an exact number yet, but it's going to be several. And thank you for having me on, John. And it's always nice talking to you anyway.
Carl, have a great afternoon.
You too.
This is John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Deaths are spiking in Phoenix and then some, and the water temperature in Florida has hit almost 102 degrees. That's like get out of the hot tub temperature. Alex Stone joins us now from Los Angeles. He is the man that ABC News tasks with talking about the weather from coast to coast more often than not. Alex, what can you tell us to start in Phoenix? How bad is it?
Yeah, so, a couple of staggering numbers here in all of this, and some of it in Maricopa County in the Phoenix area. So they have been, it's like 26, 27 days now above 110 degrees. And the number of dead from the heat went up by 7 today in the latest count the Maricopa County has put out, that the coroner in the county around Phoenix that they have now attributed to people dying from the heat is now at 25. But the bigger number, 249 more deaths that the coroner believes are related to the heat that they're investigating right now, and autopsies and waiting for toxicology and all the rest. So the numbers are going up quickly. When you hear that the heat can be deadly in Phoenix, it definitely is right now. And then at hospitals, John, they say that they are seeing a lot of people coming in with severe burns, people who, whether it be running out to the mailbox and not putting on shoes or tripping and falling or for whatever reason that they touch the ground. Some of them are homeless. Many of them are not. That they are getting a lot of folks coming into the only certified burn unit in Arizona, and that they've got actually a wing that they were using, or an overflow area they were using during the pandemic for COVID patients coming in. Now they're using it for burn patients. This is one of the docs running that unit telling our team.
We have just been seeing a huge spike in the number of people with contact burns. Most people don't realize that the pavement, concrete, cement, sidewalks, rocks, the temperature of those surfaces can get to be 170 to 180 degrees, which is just a little bit below the boiling temperature of water. So it only takes a fraction of a second to get a really bad burn.
The boiling temperature of water. And then, so what they're doing now is using city buses as mobile cooling centers in Phoenix, parking them downtown, parking them wherever they need them, and then idling them from 11 in the morning until 7 at night during the hottest period of the day, and allowing anybody to come in and just sit in the bus. They've got bottled water in there as well, with the air conditioning on high, just blowing out cold air. And they say the downtown bus that they're getting about 120 people a day who are coming in, and it's a mix from the homeless to people who are walking around downtown and just need to take a break, to those that all of a sudden are finding that they're overwhelmed by the heat and they want to go in and sit there for a few minutes and cool down. That typically it would be in senior centers or in libraries, that sort of thing, and then people may not go into those. But just a bus parked there with the light-up sign on the front saying, need a break, come and sit down. People are taking advantage of that. But it's been pretty extreme. The day for 15 days, 16 days now have not gotten under 90 degrees, and it's going to be a while before they do.
Aren't they concerned in Florida, not only with the temperature off the coast, but also the Everglades? And it's causing a biological disaster, this weather, isn't it?
Yeah, they're seeing bleaching of the coral now and coral dying off in some of these areas. So you were mentioning the temperature. That was off of Key Largo, where a buoy got this week 101.1 degrees. Now, the buoys around it are in the upper 90s, so they've got to go out and confirm that that buoy is not registering a couple of degrees above what it really is. If that is confirmed, that will be the global record for ocean water temperature, never before seen. Either way, the ocean is very hot right now, but if it is that. So I looked up today the hot tub temperature that most humans enjoy, and that is 100 to 102. So 101.1 sits right in there of literally the hot tub temperature, and it's darn hot. No, even if that's registering a little bit too warm, or it may be right on. They got to go out and figure it out. The big concern now, obviously, is the environmental impact immediately, but also as we go into August and September and October, the heart of hurricane season. Think Hurricane Katrina was the end of August. Many of the big ones have been beginning of September. That with that hot of water in the Gulf and off the coast of Florida, that will be super octane fuel for any storm that comes into the area. So hopefully not a lot comes off of Africa and across the Atlantic and then into the southern Florida area. But if it does, these next couple of months could be really, really bad. So the high temperatures like that, then that will impact gas prices, and because of all the oil off the coast in the Gulf, that hopefully we don't have a real active hurricane season. If we do, it could be bad.
Do you have a hard out, as we say in this business?
Nope, I'm all yours.
All right, I heard you report on this story. I don't want to sandbag you, but I applauded as I was driving in today when I heard you report on this. Airplane bathrooms, they are going to, there's going to be some sort of move by the FAA that they're going to expand not airport bathrooms, airplane bathrooms, obviously, on the 33rd anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. This is going to be a rule change to give guys my size a little bit more room in airplane bathrooms. When does that take place?
Yeah, so it's going to be here pretty soon, except it is new airplanes or those that are being renovated. So, when United in Chicago goes and redoes the interior of their planes, which they're actually doing a lot of right now, is they're going to a new interior on some of their aircraft, that the rule would be, I believe when they're redoing them, but definitely for new airplanes, that at least one bathroom on a single-aisle plane has to be big enough for two adult males to comfortably maneuver around inside. Now, a lot of people are going to come up with different things of
Sounds
why are
like
we
a
talking
joke.
about two adults need to have room to maneuver inside of an airplane bathroom. It comes down to helping somebody who might be elderly or in a wheelchair. The two adults, so a helper and an assistant could get in and help them out. Look, I mean, I have two young children, and when we flew to Hawaii a couple of months ago, to take my 8-year-old to the bathroom so, she could use the crazy toilet and all of that, she doesn't know how to use it. You go in there, even as an adult and a small child, you cannot turn around in there. I mean, they are so small now. Even as a one person in there, sometimes they're super tight. So the rule is going to be that they have got to make one bathroom on board quite a bit bigger. And this is in line with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And on this anniversary, making the announcement, the DOT, Department of Transportation, saying airlines, you got to do it because the claim is that people who are in wheelchairs, that they have to make a choice of do they soil themselves in their seat or, do they somehow, or do they not drink at all and dehydrate themselves because they cannot use an airplane bathroom. And so they're telling them you got to do it.
They'll have the initials on the door, MHC, Mile High Club.
Well,
have you ever
if you've been on some foreign airlines where they've got windows in the bathrooms and everything, you realize just what we put up with as American flyers of how small they are and no windows or anything.
So they can have a couple more seats on the plane. And then do you recall, I don't know if you've seen this movie, the Chris Farley scene in Tommy Boy where he tries to change in the airplane bathroom?
Yes. Yeah.
I can relate.
Bouncing off all the walls and everything.
Yeah. Alex, thanks so much. Appreciate it, sir. Have a great afternoon. We appreciate it.
You too. Thanks, John.
Take care.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
All right, let's set the politics aside for just a few minutes and talk whiskey and lobster rolls with Hoyt's American Tavern. They're located in the Hotel 71, right at 71 East Wacker, and it's great to welcome Executive Chef John Randolph to mic number 2 here at WLS. Hoyt is not a very common name. It's a common name in my family. But how was Hoyt's name?
From what I understand is that Hoyt's, there used to be a supermarket called Hoyt's that was in the area. And I think he was kind of the first gentleman that brought the idea of supermarkets to Chicago. So that's what we named the restaurant after.
How long has the restaurant been open?
It has been open at least 5 years. It is under the hotel that's in is under new management. It's under Sonesta now. Before it was a Wyndham.
So tell me what makes the decor and I guess more importantly the menu special.
I'm a big proponent of just good simple food. I don't need a lot of the frills and things. I prefer just very simple dishes. So I really think that our flavors shine through more than anything. Obviously, it's a restaurant. We use a lot of fresh herbs, but that definitely does give it a kick. We use a little extra for most things. I like things a little bit spicy usually too. So try to throw in that little bit of extra heat and acid in our dishes as well.
Culinarily, who are your big influences? Who do you study under or admire?
Well, one of my biggest favorite chefs is actually in the city. Paul Kahn. He runs the Publican, Big Star, all the one-off hospitality restaurants. But he was always a big proponent of mine. Love his food. Kind of same way. Very simple presentation, but just massive flavors in the food. What are some of your favorite menu items at Hoyt's? At Hoyt's, we brought our lobster rolls for you to try today. I think they're phenomenal. Kind of a little take on the Chicago hot dog. We serve ours in a poppy seed. Wow. Yeah, poppy seed bun. No jardiniere or, sport peppers, but it has a little bit of togarashi in it, so it gives a little bit of that kick. I love pork, so I think our pork chop is wonderful. We have an amazing burger as well. I know everybody loves burgers. It's kind of a take on the Crybaby burger that was originated here in Chicago. So it's a double smash patty, cheddar cheese, bacon and onion jam, our house sauce, pickles, and brioche bun. They're phenomenal. What's the jam made out of? Rendered bacon, balsamic vinegar, and onions, caramelized onions. So. Did you follow the James Beard Awards here in town? I did not, unfortunately, but I heard it was a great time, and I actually met one of the chefs that came in. He worked for Edwin's in Cleveland, and I was a chef in Cleveland for a while, too, and worked with Edwin's with hiring, and they have run a phenomenal program over there.
Well, with all due respect to Cleveland, now Chicago is a town that's all about food. So,
Yes.
Thanks for bringing the lobster rolls. We'll have them immediately. What's in that nice little tumbler there?
That is our Satori whiskey drink. It's Satori whiskey, which is a Japanese whiskey, plum brandy, and then we put a little PT flowers in it to kind of give it a nice kind of a purplish blue hue to it. So it's kind of sweet, smoky with the Satori whiskey. The Japanese like their whiskey's a little smokier. So it's kind of sweet, smoky, savory. It's kind of, I guess, like the weather today.
Yeah. Sweet and smoky.
Sweet and smoky.
Thanks, Canada. So I'll enjoy that after the show. Chef, good luck.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hoyt's American Tavern at the Royal Sonesta, right along the river. Chef John Rudolph is here. He brought us some wonderful lobster rolls, kind of inspired by a Chicago hot dog, and a nice whiskey drink for us to enjoy immediately after the show. I know you're originally from Buffalo.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about the Bills.
We love them, and we support them no matter what.
I'm old enough to remember Marv Levy, Chicago's own Marv Levy, taking your Bills to the Super Bowl 4 consecutive years and losing every time.
Well, we try to look at it as that we won the AFC Championship 4 years in a row. So
that's it.
And we have records that nobody can beat.
I did meet Scott Norwood, the field goal kicker. Still very, very bitter man. Years after that, laces out.
Yeah. Always laces out.
But I'll come over to Hoyt's American Grill soon.
Can't wait to see you.
This is John Howell Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Wheels of justice. They grind. Sometimes they grind slow. Sometimes they grind relatively fast. This was pretty quick. A judge has rejected Evanston's request to limit discussion of Northwestern's football stadium plans. This happened yesterday. U.S. District Judge Nancy Maldonado denied a motion to change a 19-year-old court order to restrict discussion of that project. She said the language in the order was crystal clear. The City Corporation Council for Evanston had asked the court to remove the stadium's parking lot from any consideration by a committee that debates disputes over the school's land use. The committee was created back in 2004 by a consent decree after Northwestern sued the city to invalidate its historic district so they could have more power and less resistance. This is my conjecture. This was almost 20 years ago. But as we were having this discussion with Bob McCoppin, who wrote on this again today in the Chicago Tribune, we were having this discussion, I think, on Monday. Yeah, because I said, the judge will look at this tomorrow. Bob pointed out at that time that the so-called committee really has no power whatsoever.
Well, that's the thing. The committee has no power. So they can talk about things, but they have no power. But the alderman reports back then to the city council the concerns of the residents and whatever, the school is working on. So, so this, the proposed stadium, of course, is going to be hashed out thoroughly before the city's land use commission, and ultimately the city council. But this committee wants first crack at it. The residents want to be able to air their concerns because Northwestern wants to hold like 10 concerts now at the new stadium, rock concerts, music concerts. And so the residents are very opposed to that, having the traffic and noise from that in their neighborhood.
By the way, city staff members are reviewing Northwestern's traffic and noise studies. And as Bob mentioned, that happens on August 23rd, the hearing before the Land Use Commission. Now, no changes have been proposed to the parking lot, but it'll be a springboard to bring up all these other problems. And the committee has used its jurisdiction over that lot as a basis for essentially, letting residents object about the proposed noise and traffic from the concerts that are proposed for this new stadium. So the city has tried to quash this before. Yes, Bob?
Yes, Northwestern had raised this issue previously and said, hey, this committee is not the proper forum to be talking about the stadium because it's not under their purview. And so you would expect Northwestern to file a motion like this, but for some reason they didn't want to, and the city attorney did so instead. Again, saying that since the two sides were disagreeing about this, that he just wants a judge to clarify it.
In other words, Northwestern prompted Evanston's corporate counsel to push this in front of the judge. Judge said, no, it's going to stand the way it is. Northwestern's a little busy nowadays with some, I guess, hazing scandal, Bob?
Right. And so people are, with the hazing scandal coming on and spreading to other, beyond football, to other programs, the opponents of the stadium are saying, hey, with the hazing scandal, they should just back off the stadium proposal for now and concentrate on fixing the hazing problem and then come back to the stadium later.
So the judge, Maldonado, recommended collaboration and communication. In other words, get out of my courtroom, not changing anything. You have to deal with this committee, and they can bring up the parking lot and use it as a springboard to worry about the parking and the crowds at these 10 rock concerts, which you want to have at the Dyke Stadium. I'm sorry, no longer Dyke Stadium. It'll be Ryan Stadium. Although the Dyke family was promised that name in perpetuity until the Ryan family had a lot of money. Well, anyway, that's a different subject. But so they're going to have 10 concerts at that stadium. And as much as I'd like to say the residents are going to win this, as I was discussing this with Bob a couple days ago on this program, I've seen this movie before in Wrigleyville.
Yeah, there are some parallels there. And right now, of course, Wrigley Field has concerts, regularly throughout the season. So, but again, Northwestern is sort of on the defensive because of this hazing scandal.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
John Howell, Essential Cuts. Check back every weekday for another episode of John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.